Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for a one-on-one discussion about the ultimate living experience. I am honored to introduce our panelists, A-list real estate agent Jade Mills and award-winning architect Paul McClean.
Thank you.
Jade's name is positively synonymous with the ultimate luxury living experience. She is known among her colleagues and clients alike for her integrity and professionalism. Jade is currently ranked the #1 agent worldwide for Coldwell Banker, surpassing and earning $6 billion in sales. Recently, Jade represented 3 of the top record-setting sales in Los Angeles for over $100 million each, including the Playboy Mansion and the Aaron Spelling Manor. Impressive. Paul McClean is one of the leading contemporary residential architects in Southern California. He has a prestigious celebrity clientele. In addition to spacious coastal homes that emphasize light and space, his projects can be seen in such diverse places as England, Thailand, and Canada. His work reflects an interest in modern living and a profound connection to the natural environment. The incorporation of water and indoor-outdoor living are hallmarks of McClean's designs. Paul recently released his first book with Rizzoli, McClean Design, Creating the Contemporary House, and it's one of the top design books of the year. Congratulations. And Jade, I'll turn this over to you.
Well, thank you so much for having me and letting us share our thoughts and ideas. And I'm honored to be here. And I have to say that I've had quite a few experiences with Paul, and I think that he is the wow architect. So these are a few of my listings or things that I have had listed. And as you'll see, I do have quite a few contemporary homes and homes that Paul has designed. I think the last one I sold was on Marchita.
Right.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if we're going to see any images, but I think right now, Paul has designed the most expensive home in the world.
I wouldn't like that. Maybe, yes, very close.
So that is really crazy. But this is all really true California architecture. And as you can see, I mean, this has been what we've been selling for the last few years. So I think now we're getting into, I think that's Doheny that Paul designed. So now we're getting into all of yours.
Yes, I saw. Yeah, this is Marchita, I think, isn't it? You sold, right, Jade?
It is Marchita.
Yeah, I like that one. I like the palette, actually. That was Linda Murray did the palette on that. It was really pretty.
So a lot of your homes have been in the Sunset Strip.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, of course, you have designed everywhere. And I know you live in the South Bay, but you've designed everywhere. I mean, even Northern California and all over the world, actually. But I know the ones, there's my Gilchrist. I know the ones that you have designed, of course, locally. And I mean, they're spectacular.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jade. It's always a pleasure to work with you and always great to chat with you.
So many of the homes you've designed have these incredible views. I know that a lot of the houses that you've done for spec, people have chosen these lots with the views, and a lot of owner-user properties they've chosen with these views. It seems like your architecture goes hand in hand with these amazing views.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's funny how these things come about. You start solving problems on difficult hillsides, and then people see the result, and then you end up doing more of those. So I think we've been really lucky to get to do so many projects locally. And it's funny, we have in our office a little map of LA, and it's a bit like, not to use the virus, but if you start in the middle, the epicenter is like Sunset Strip, and it kind of filters out from there. And now all around the world, which is fantastic, a whole other set of challenges. But I do think that there's something, I mean, California design has is the best place to be working and doing residential design. There's the appetite for it, the history, the weather, so many work in our favor. Obviously, the financial capability of our clients as well is a big part of that.
Well, how does this compare to Dublin, where you're from? Because I know that that's where you're from.
Yes, it is. So it's very different. In fact, I don't know if it could be any more different. I mean, Dublin is a tight, old urban city where everything is on top of each other and things are generally small in scale. But it's very pedestrian friendly and only 3 to 4 stories high. So it's really human in scale, which is really nice. But it's actually wet and there really isn't room to design much in the way of contemporary housing. So it's more like homes, terrace housing. Most people live in terraces of one form or the other. And so even when I was a little boy, I mean, I was always drawing houses. And as soon as I started discovering, probably when I was 16 or 17, I started to discover, you know, Californian residential architecture and looking at things all the way back to the 1920s and 30s when Schindler and Neutra showed up, and then later the case study houses, and all the way up to Frank Gehry's houses. It was just like a spectacular eye-opener that you could design projects like that. So that was one of the main reasons I came here, was to try and experience some of that, try and work with people doing that. Never really thought we'd get to do it ourselves.
But that's amazing that you were able to see that without actually seeing it in Dublin. You were seeing pictures and you were seeing things probably on TV. But I know Frank Lloyd Wright, I think, was also an inspiration to you. You told me a long time ago. And yeah. I think that to be able to envision this when you don't really see it, it is amazing. Because, and I know you said before, you started like sketching when you were a tiny boy and you knew what you wanted to do, like way back then. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah, Mom always said she knew something was up because when I drew houses when I was 4, I always put those in the right places in the doors. Starting there.
I love it. Well, you are known for the wow factor. I mean, when you walk into one of your homes, it is like, whoa, your ceilings are high, your spaces are incredible. It's wide open space. As Christine just described, it's the air, water, fire experience. And that is truly an emotional wow. So I don't know how that happened, because some of your favorite architects are more compartmentalized, but you really got it all.
Well, thank you for saying that, but I think some of that actually came out of doing speculative homes. And that was a great learning experience because you can relatively fast, like 95% of our projects are homeless, and some of them normally it would take us a year to get permits for a home. Some of these are taking 3-4 years, like, well, people, they get distracted. And, you know, so the fact that we could do things quick and try things out was really amazing. But that was something that, you know, people impress on me, especially people like you, Jade, you know, that you need to make that emotional connection to get people in the door. And that was something I learned through the speculative experience, you know, to try and grab them, to get them excited. And that if you know, especially if you're, as you know, if you're trying to sell a house, you know, every house has its faults. Maybe it doesn't have exactly the right number of bedrooms, or, you know, I don't know, the right number of bathrooms, whatever it is. But if you get them as they're coming in the door and they can imagine themselves living there and they're excited, then you're one half the battle, I think, right?
We always say you don't sell a home, you sell a lifestyle and an experience. And I think that is so true. You get them in the door and you have the music playing and the fire on and the waterfall going. And who doesn't want to live like that? And as you said, no house is perfect for the buyer. That's not to say that that house isn't perfect, but many times if something has 5 bedrooms, the buyer will come in and say, oh my gosh, I only want 2. I wouldn't know what to do with those bedrooms, so I don't want 5. If the house has 5 bedrooms and someone else comes through, they'll say, well, this is great, it has 5, but I need 2 more for staff. So the house can be absolutely perfect, but it's not perfect for everyone.
Right. So how do you solve that problem then when people come in, or can you?
Well, I think that what we need to be really are, and I know that you are too, you need to be a bit of a therapist. You need to explain to them how they can live in this house. And I think it's always better to have too many bedrooms than not enough. So you really have to figure out how to explain to them to use the extra bedrooms, or who doesn't want a home office right now? I mean, that is one of our requirements at the moment, because people don't want to go to their offices. So the requirements that we're hearing right now, well, I have to have a home office. I have to have a home gym. And I have to have your favorite thing, the outdoor space. And you do that so well. But the outdoor space has to be available, because when you have friends or your even immediate family, children, grandchildren, you need to have spaces outside where you can set up your tables, and you're so good at that.
I think that's one thing that's so wonderful, that we can do that here, I think, so easily. But I haven't thought that a lot during the pandemic. And I mean, there's so many people around the world that are stuck in small apartments with no access to the exterior. And in other jurisdictions, a lot more serious, or taken a lot more seriously. People are allowed to go out maybe for an hour a day, or they get fined if they leave the home. And it does make you think about, we're getting, I guess, a bit more critically aware of our home surroundings than we used to be because of the virus. I mean, all those things you mentioned are so true. And people they're paying more attention. But I think in the past, it was like, you get a house and, there may be a spare room. You say, I could use it for an office. But now people are saying things like, well, if I'm working from home, I don't want to bring people to the house. So can you locate the home office in a way that business people can come in without going to the house? Versus in the old days, that 5th bedroom will do just fine, because, I'll only be in there once a week. But, thinking differently about it, and thinking about, the fact that maybe the kids are, which we're not used to, and like, how do you meetings with, what about public private space? Is everyone, I know a lot of people working on their beds, and I think that's really sad. And, we'd like to design houses to give them opportunities for, different people in the household to be able to work at the same time, or to manage different activities at the same time. So I think all of this is becoming more critical through the process.
Well, I think too, you were saying that now there's a new ruling on guest houses. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's so important in both of our businesses.
Yeah, I think it's for California here, but as we all have quite the house crisis in California, it's really an affordability crisis more than anything. So the state has brought in a new law that allows people to build second units on single family lots, which is the majority of housing in California is single residence. That's why we're so spread out, but that's the theme of California, especially Southern California. You come here, you have your garden, you're in the city, but you have a garden and a swimming pool. I mean, that's pretty spectacular. I don't think any other major metropolitan area does that in the world, but it leads to problems. It leads to sprawl, leads to traffic congestion. And so what the state is trying to do is encourage people to build second units, and then use those either to rent them out, or for other family members, who can't afford to move out, perhaps. Maybe your grown kids or your elderly relatives. And each city has its own size and limitations, but they're all required to let you do it, which is really interesting, because a lot of cities have design review boards and other means of restricting what's built, and they cannot get around this. They have to. So it's really going to help, I think.
Well, now I have a question.
All right.
So I have 4 children. Can I build 4 guest houses on my property? Because I would love all 4 of them to live here.
I think one that, you know, I think there must be to do that. I mean, I think that's, I mean, it's a great question, because I feel like also that our culture here is everyone moving out of the home and living separately. I think in most Western countries, we've seen the size of households, the majority of those are made of person now, but in societies, for 3 generations, I think that's something that the corona pandemic is again helping us see, that between the housing crisis and the pandemic, we're learning to live together as families again and seeing the benefits of that, and as well as the negatives. That's how old your kids are. I mean.
I agree, though. I think it's really brought a lot of people back together with their families. And I feel that the children that wanted to be away have found that being with their parents and their brothers and sisters is not so bad, and they've really enjoyed it. And I think that it's been, if anything has been a blessing, I think that has been a blessing. I feel that how wonderful that, you know, we had Christmas at my house outside. We had 5 tables. I have 4 children. We had 5 tables set up outside and a family at each table. And we were social distancing. And everybody, we set up the buffet outside. And it was absolutely wonderful. I mean, we would not give that up. But I really feel that it has brought a lot of people together, because you almost feel like you're okay with your family, even though we were all masked and we did social distance, but it was really wonderful, you know, that we could all be together. So another question for you. Tell me about your house. I know your house is sensational.
Thank you.
You have a warm contemporary.
We have a warm, contemporary feeling at our house. We were really lucky to have the opportunity to build our own home. And we were lucky also to have a great lot, which is, but we have views in 270 degrees, but we don't see any neighbors, which is really fascinating because of the topography in the street, and it's flat. So we were able to do a single level home. Room you can look out at nature, and in one direction we see South Orange County, so at nighttime we get some city lights, so it's like a beautiful combination of both. But it was really a challenge to build a house for ourselves. We're 4, you know, plus animals, and we didn't want to have the type of house where, you know, if you throw your shoes in the middle of the living room, the decor looks ruined.
I've seen that.
Yeah, you've seen those homes. We had to accommodate teenagers and dogs and cats and God knows what else. So we wanted it to be warm and inviting, but also to get that quintessential California feeling where, you know, it was open to nature, where we had a lot of light, a lot of glass. And so we tried to instill a lot of the ideas we do in our day-to-day work into that. But I will tell you, I wish every architect could have the opportunity to build their own home, because there is nothing like even though I've been doing homes for 25 years, it's totally different doing your own home and making those decisions for yourself, and maybe more importantly, writing those checks for yourself. It really gives you an incredible dose of realism. And
you're on the other side.
You're on the other side. And I bring that, you know, it's come so much into my own business now that the experience has really helped me so much, because, you know, people come to me with great ideas about budgets and prices, and I have to be the voice of realism. I'm like, look, I've been through this, you know, I know how this is going to go myself. So, you know, it was a wonderful experience that way. We did manage not to get divorced as well, which was also great.
Well, that's sometimes difficult when you're doing a house. I know how that is.
We've had some clients where, you know, they will call us, this is the therapy bit, Jade, you know, where they'll call us up separately and say, well, you tell this to my husband, like you think this is a good And then somebody comes and says, will you tell this to my wife that you think this is a good idea?
So let me ask you this. How do you see homes change in how have things changed, I guess, in the last 5 years? Because I've seen a big change.
Yeah, I think I've seen definitely from a material perspective a move to much warmer palettes and much more variety of texture and color than, you know, if you look back 50 years ago, it was a lot simpler to palette and probably a lot brighter. So people are looking for warmth and more natural materials, which I think suits my own taste, but it also has better longevity, I think, because it's not really fashionable. It's, you know, a beautiful limestone or a travertine floor. I mean, we've been putting those in, well, we've been putting travertine in floors for 2,000 years, you know, so it doesn't go out of style. So I think that's a great improvement. Other than that, I mean, the trends would be towards wellness at home, gyms at home, offices at home, all those things you mentioned. I think that the pandemic is a bit of an accelerant that way. It encourages trends that were starting to happen and pushes them faster into existence. But I don't know, a lot of our clients are saying they won't go back to a public gym if they can avoid it, you know, so they're looking at trying to replicate a full experience at home. So gyms have definitely moved to the forefront with people, and not in the sense like, oh, I have a spare room, I'll use it as a gym, but the realization that a proper gym is a big
A real gym.
A real gym. And then I think the wellness experience is something that our clients are often lucky enough to be able to look at, but it is something they bring home from staying in nice hotels pre-pandemic or resorts. And you're like, if I could create this sense of wellness and zen and just peacefulness at my home, indoor, outdoor spaces like that, that's something we're seeing a lot of requests for.
Do you find that you're an architect? Do you find that people want you to do their interiors also and choose their finishes as far as, you know, countertops, bathrooms, all of those things?
You know, they do. What we try and do, though, we try and work with interior designers because we do like to have that fresh perspective. As one of my clients, you know, that you know well, Naomi said, if Paul was going really crazy, he'd probably put, you know, 2 shades of limestone in a house. My palette is very simple. So, but I see that as a baseline, and my clients and their designers, they make these houses more about them. I mean, I really want for our projects the houses to reflect the people that they're being built for. So really hard for our clients to select imagery of what they like. So the house that you see behind me here, this is a picture from a house in West Hollywood. And this client, he had 3 dogs. At the time when we started, he was not married. Now they have some kids as well. But he had an industrial aesthetic. He wanted to have a lot of steel and concrete and
beautiful.
And, you know, and with tall spaces, and these doors tilt up, they don't slide. So it has that feeling, but that all came from him, not from me. And I really enjoyed being able to make that work for him. But I think, you know, I get tired when it gets to fabrics and stuff. So having a good interior designer can really bring out the best in the house. So especially since a lot of these homes are rather large, it's a lot of decisions to make.
It is. So that brings me to, I know you work with a lot of developers, and I know you work with a lot of owner users. What do you feel is easier for you, the developer or the owner user?
That's a great question. What's easier is the developer, and that's pretty straightforward because they usually come, they have a budget and a timetable, and I don't think they really care exactly what we design because they're leaving that to us, right? But what's more satisfying is the homeowners, and it is more work, but the end result is usually better because, you know, there's more of a critical process, you know, going backwards and forwards, and you're really creating dreams for people. And that's what I got into this business for, you know, to know the people. I mean, I have a project now where I'm doing the home for, You know, the daughter of a client who was like, when I was one of my first houses, and they were like 7 or 8 years old, and now we're doing their house, you know, which is next door to grandma's house, you know, and it's like, that is just the most satisfying part of the job, just seeing people use and enjoy, and the little notes we get from clients about how much they enjoy their houses, and getting to see what they change, and you know how much fun it is. They'll invite us over to see if we like what they did, and you know, it's always great to see how it changes and how they grow into it. So when you do a house with a developer, it's a lot of fun and it's quicker, but you don't have that connection to the owner at the end, you know, and so you may never see the house again.
I think also the owner user makes a lot of changes along the way. And so that's so time consuming, and that takes much longer for the house to be completed also, because every change is weeks or months, or you know, could be a very long time, going back to the city maybe and getting different permits, whatever. But I think I feel the same way about, I want my clients to be very happy in their home. I'm not the architect, but I feel like I'm responsible for putting them in a home that they are going to love and enjoy with their children. And I have the same situation. I have people that I've sold to 15 or 20 years ago. I'm now buying small houses or condominiums for their children.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that some of these people are still in their homes, and some of these people have moved 3 or 4 times. It's so funny in LA because they say every 7 years you move. I have people that I sold to 20 years ago that are still in those homes. Yeah. And I have people that I sold a year ago that have now are in a little bit different bracket financially, and they want something bigger, or they want bigger land or whatever. So, but I have that same feeling. I love when my past clients come back to me and say they're happy.
Yeah, I think as well, Jade, one thing especially about you is that, you know, you're incredibly honest, and you're not selling houses for the sake of selling houses. You know, you're selling for your clients. So you don't have a problem. And I feel the same way. If someone comes to me or come to you and, you know, you don't think it's right for them, you just tell them, even if you live.
Absolutely.
Because in the long run, you've built that trust that there'll be a sale down the road, one way or the other, right? So I think that's so important, and that's why you're as successful as you are.
Or if they're vacillating and you know that it's the right thing for them. Last night, I was going through this with my client because I know the right thing for them is to step up and move into this other house.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were like having a little conversation last night because I kept saying, no, this is what's best for you. I'm telling you. And the wife was on my side, and he was saying, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. In the end, that little nudge, they are never going to be sorry that they've made this decision. And I know it. Yeah. So sometimes you have to give them that little push. And sometimes if they want to buy in an area that you don't think is right for them, you've got to pull them back. And I've had people say to me, look, I'm the one buying it. You know, don't tell me not to buy on this bad corner. And I'll say, you're going to want me to sell that for you down the road. And that's going to be a very hard sale. So we have to just give the right advice. They can do whatever they want to do.
Exactly. But that's why I like you and trust you. And you need to get into that position so that they can feel comfortable that you're not doing this just because, like that one last night. You've sold enough houses this year. You don't need to sell that one, but you think it's right for them, you know, and that's why you're doing it. And they know that. And that's why I think you're so successful.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Well, we're sort of in the same boat. You want the confidence of your clients, and you want them to refer you and to keep coming back. Integrity is everything in your business and mine. I mean, if you give the right advice, you'll have too much business.
Yeah, I can't count the number of times I've told people not to buy a lot because it's got problems and it's just not going to work for them. then, you know, 2 years later, they're back and we're designing a house for them. So in the long run, you're not turning away work. You're just helping your client get the best situation for themselves.
Yes, no, absolutely true. I think that I know that I get sometimes too involved, and I have to kind of step back and say, okay, I can give advice, but this isn't my house. You know, I have to let them make that final decision. But sometimes it's very hard. I'm sure when you're designing something and they want to design a bar in the middle of the room or some crazy thing, it's very hard to say that's not going to work if that's what they want.
Yeah, there's always two ways. That's where the therapy degree comes in handy, you know? But again, it's like, you know, I try, it really comes down to integrity and honesty, really, you know, because you just have to be honest about things. I mean, there are times where clients want something and I don't think it's a good idea, but they really passionately want it and we do it, you know, and you make your argument. And if your argument doesn't work, then you step back and you find a way to make it work. But there are other times where, you know, there's an idea that they have that's fantastic. And so we want to encourage that. So it really depends on the client too. There are so many stories I could tell you over the years, but a lot of it is they have confidence in you because of what you do. And I've often been told by people I'm brilliant at technology, or I'm a great business person, but I have no clue how to do a house. But that's why you're here. You know?
That's right.
And
the houses that you're building in Northern California different? Do people want different styles, or do they hire you just because they know that you're the expert in your style?
All of our homes around the world are in a similar style, but what's interesting about it is that the clients hire us because of our work, right? But sometimes, you know, they will say, oh, I love this house you did there, like in California. And we're looking at going, well, that's not really appropriate for this other location. So, but what we're finding, which really interesting, is I had a great experience maybe about 15 years ago where I did a house in Germany. And my friend there, I tried 3 versions, and then he said, you know, I'm going to have to fire you soon because all you're doing is like a contextual house for a southern German village. He said, I want a California house. And so we did design this much more contemporary home. And I remember going to the village and they had a hearing about it. And everyone in the village was very concerned about this very modern home. But we were trying to make it very discreet on the village side. It was very open to the view. And they said in the end they were willing to move forward with it. But I got to stay there a few years later. And I stayed there in February and it was like a foot of snow on the ground. And I was just standing inside looking out at all the activity with the birds and, you know, the wildlife. And I was like, this house works beautifully here. I mean, it has things technology-wise or glazing-wise that had to be done different, but it really works. And that gave me confidence to try and do these type of homes in other places. But what's really, really fascinating is when we're doing a house in Thailand right now, and it's just people live differently. So we have to think about how they live differently and how can we adapt our design to the way they live, such as they really don't cook. They have people that cook for them always, but they really want a kitchen, but they don't really want a kitchen. They want something that's more like a bar, you know, where they can maybe make a cup of coffee, put snacks out and sit at the bar, but they really don't want like cooktop, for example, or refrigeration that all goes somewhere else. And so they have a lot of staff. So how do we make the house work where they don't see the staff all the time when it's a glass house, you know? And then
you do that here too. I mean, I know some of your houses where you have the chef's kitchen behind, and then you have the kitchen in front. The chef's kitchen can be closed off for the smell of the food. And the show kitchen is this beautiful kitchen that probably doesn't get used very often, but it's beautiful. And people do love that now. The other thing that's so interesting that you just said that I didn't really realize is you do have to think about if you're building in Deer Valley and it snows there, you do have to think about the windows and how you change a lot of the materials that you're using. And I really didn't think about that before, but those are all things that have to be taken into consideration when you're building in a different area.
It's very true. I mean, we're doing homes in different places. Like we've done houses in the snow, we're doing beach houses, desert houses, and our climate here is probably the most forgiving in many ways. You can use more materials. You don't have to be quite as careful, but it's really amazing how the environment can just kill these materials so fast, and the little things you need. One of the most interesting things, though, which surprised me, was we did a house in Whistler in Canada, a ski house, and we had flat roofs. And I was like, we were going to do, we thought every ski house had to have a pitch roof, but we had a snow consultant, and he was like, no, flat roofs are so much better. That way the snow tends to come off and fall on people in big chunks if you have pitch roofs. So if you have a nice flat roof, it'll just slip.
Oh my gosh.
I never would have thought that in a million years.
Never. I would think that it would be much better because the snow would get so heavy.
Well, it gets so heavy and then it falls on you like a concrete block, So people get injured every year by their snow on their roofs. So, yeah, it's interesting. So who knew, like, flat contemporary houses worked well in the snow?
Well, I know in the desert where it's very, very hot, that those windows have to be tinted. You have to have shades. I mean, there's so many different layers of what you need in the desert because the heat is so intense. But
Exactly.
if your window, even in LA, if your windows are, the sun is beating in those windows, it changes your floor color, it changes your furniture, it changes your art. I mean, you really have to be very careful with huge windows. Huge windows are beautiful and everybody wants them, but then you have to take into consideration what you have to do to protect everything.
Yeah, and like you said, everyone wants them, but one thing that we're working on a couple of projects right now where they're like, well, where are we going to put our art? Because there's views in every direction. Where are we going to put the art?
Well, but you have so many of these houses that have all windows on the view side, and then you have so many walls for art on the interior. And I know I had one client that really wanted one of your houses because there were so many walls for art. Marchita is one of them. I mean, that had great art walls.
Yeah.
Even though you had so many windows and great views. It's really, I think it comes down to a mixture of doing the right things. As we said, everybody comes in and nothing is perfect. You have to make it perfect.
Yeah.
And that's, I know you said, a while back, you said everybody wants to turn their garage into a gym because it's like the right square footage. But then what do you do for garage? I guess you pull it forward. I mean, I know you have a lot of ideas about that, but that's about the right square footage for the home gym.
It is, and that's one thing we tell people, when they're thinking about homes, is just to get the sizing right. I mean, really, I think perhaps the big difference between homes now and 50 years ago is, apart from the size, they've obviously grown a lot, but they haven't grown in terms of the number of spaces. They've generally grown in terms of the scale of the spaces. And that's, like, we use that comparison, like you said, like a 3-car garage is a great size for a gym if you want to have some weight machines and a bike or a treadmill and some place to do stretching and floor works. You need that amount of space. And, the other thing that I find people often don't quite understand is how much room staircases take. When our clients draw plans for us, the staircase is like in a 3-foot closet. When in reality, it's a size of a 2-car garage to do a grand staircase. So just getting that scale right. It's just how houses always creep up in scale. Or a typical one, a client says, I live in a 3,000 square foot house right now, and I don't want to live in something bigger, but then I need ABC.
A gym, an office.
And you're like,
I've heard that too.
Okay, so 6,000 square feet. So
no, it's so funny because people will say to me, I don't need a big house, but this is what I need. And their list is like 15 rooms, but I don't need a big house. And you think, wait a minute, you just gave me all these rooms you need and you want it to be 3,000 square feet. It's impossible. But it is funny that people think that they can do all these things in 3,000 square feet, but that's all education. And that's part of our job. Part of your job and part of my job is to educate people on what they need, what the square footage is, also the area. I've had people come into town from out of town and say, okay, my children are going to be going to Harvard Westlake, for instance, and we want to look in Hancock Park in Malibu. And I'll say, but you probably should look a little bit closer to the school. Yes. Oh yes, but I can get something for a little bit less, maybe here or there. So it really is our job to educate people on everything. I mean, even what they need in the house, because many times they can do without something that they think they must have. In fact, I had a couple who were looking for 2 offices. They needed a his and a her office. And so finally I said, we walked into a house that had a partner's desk, and it was not a big room, but the way it was designed with the partner's desk, it was very spacious for 2. Right. So they looked at this, they talked about it, and they said, okay, so we're not going to be in here always at the same time. So we can just sort of trade off time, and this is perfect. So it's you know, it's sort of the leading the horse to water situation. You can experiment with different things, and sometimes they don't know what can really work for them. I'm sure you have that all the time.
I'm just working on a new project right now, and the client had like about 9,000 square feet, but the program that we got was basically close to 15,000 square feet. And in the end, the way we could kind of move that forward was, you know, we drew it so they could really see, because it was only when we drew it out, because they were, you know, we'd like this size and this room to be that size, and we put it all together, there it was, it's like 15,000 square feet. And the, you know, the educational part, like, okay, well, you know, this and this and this deal without, but you're still going to be at 12,000 no matter what, you know. So how do you feel about that before we go in? Because if that's the case, I'm going to have to remove things. There's just not a way to make it a little smaller and get that far. You can get a little ways there, but, you know, at certain point you have to take things away to make it work. So it is a big educational process, I think.
Now I'm finding people really want, even if they can't have large square footage, they want, it's always changing with children's bedroom sizes. I mean, it used to be 10 years ago, people wanted these enormous bedrooms for their children. Then it went to the lady of the house wanted an enormous closet, and they put the kids in a 8x8 bedroom to get a huge closet. Now I think it's gone back to like nice kids' rooms, but a study room or a study area. And I think that's because of a lot of homeschooling and a lot of Zoom classes. So they want a place outside the bedrooms where maybe 2 or 3 children can be at the same time, where they can be a little bit separated, but have that one room where they can do school. Yeah,
it's really good. We're seeing coming out of this pandemic, big time. It could be a craft room. It could also be just an extra public work room, you know, because I think it's really important to get the kids, to get them out of their bedroom, you know, into a more public, to set up a routine. And when we're seeing that, all sorts of teenagers, it's like they're just lying in bed in school time, you know, with their cameras off. And, you know, it's just, they're doing bad at school because they're just not getting, it's like even you and I, you know, if we work up, we go through the motions, we have breakfast, then we go office space and down and work. Versus if we stayed in the bedroom, you'd be too busy, I don't know, checking out the internet, whatever, right? So that idea of a public workspace is, I think, great for families. And, you know, well, maybe 15 years ago, someone asked us for a gift wrapping room. And at first, we all kind of laughed about that idea. It sounded so ostentatious, a gift. What he really meant was a hobby room, like
Yeah.
projects, and they're messy that you can just leave them half finished. You don't have to pack it all up. And I just had this conversation with a new client a month ago because she was saying, I don't need an office, I don't need a space. And they're at that stage in life where they're both going to be home. And she's like, well, I can use, you know, my husband's desk sometimes. Well, what do you do? And she's like, well, I organize these charity events, and so I all this paperwork all over the floor, you know, and I get things and I have samples. And so are you going to pick that up like every time your husband wants to sit at the desk, you're going to move all that, create leave that, and not feel like you have to tidy it all the time, you know? So that I think is something that's really useful and that we see a lot of these days, you know?
Well, you know, when you're talking about the children lying in their bed and you know, I mean, I feel so bad for kids right now because whether you're in high school or grammar school or college, these poor kids are missing the school experience. And,
Really?
you know, I mean, I'm seeing it with my own family. And I see it with my clients' children. And it's, you know, I think we all miss socializing. And I think we all miss going to dinner or having people over or whatever it may be. But the children, I mean, it's like, I guess everything will be fine soon. But I think it's been so tough on them not to be able to socialize and not to be able to be in school and sports. I think sports are so important for children in high school and no matter what age, and they're missing all of that. So, you know, hopefully we can get back to some kind of normal soon, and then we'll still have the home office and home gym.
It's so true. It's because I think they're isolating a lot in their rooms and on their phones, and we don't really know what's going on there that much. And at least when they're getting out, as we all know, it's very easy to be on the internet and people say horrible things to one another. They're not in the same room. Two people with extra different views together in a room, they usually find a way to compromise most of them. So that's missing right now. So that worries me. But like you said, I hope soon we'll be getting back to normal and maybe we will appreciate a lot more the relationships we have and these little nice things and like going out to dinner with friends and things, you know, that maybe we used to roll our eyes at that we have to do it again, but maybe we'll look to it. Hopefully we'll be able to some of the positive things you mentioned, family time, keep more forward as well.
Luckily, in California, or at least in LA, we can get out. I mean, the people that are in the snow and the people, you know, that where it's so cold right now, it's so difficult, but we can still get out and take a walk or drive to the beach and walk on the beach. I mean, you can definitely stay far, far away from people if you take a walk or if you go to the beach. And the weather has, even though now it's cold, it's still beautiful. I mean, we can still bundle all up in our 40-degree weather and take a walk. So I think we're very blessed to be here where we are, living where we're living.
We really are. You know, I'll always be grateful to California for the tremendous opportunities it offered me as an immigrant. And I think there's no better place in the world to come as an immigrant, and people are so open and to let someone try, you know, which I think a lot of places that can be really difficult. So for me, that's one of the things about California is that people come here and they can start over, try new things, so that people are open. The idea that when I was starting out 20 years ago, that people would let me spend millions of their dollars, how much to show for pretty drawings, it's still to me that people will still let us do that.
So
yeah.
is a lot of your family still in Ireland?
My family's in England, yeah, so they're all there. So, but we keep in touch regularly. I talk to my mom every week. And having that more strict lockdown experience than we are, it's tougher. They don't. It's amazing, like you said, they're here just because it's dry, and even if it's cold, you can be outdoors all the time, but indoors a lot more. It makes it a little harder.
And you can't be flying back and forth right now. So you can't.
No, it's very hard.
It's not so easy to see them at the moment.
Yeah, it's hopefully soon it'll all be back to normal.
No, it will. We just have to say it will. We have to be positive about that.
2021 will not be 2020. Okay, it doesn't feel that different yet, but it's going to change.
No, it will. And so many people are now getting vaccinated. I mean, I know that we need many, many, many more, but even people that said to me a month ago, I would never get the vaccination, are saying to me, I put my name in, and a holistic doctor that I know said I would be vaccinated. I mean, it's very different than it was a month ago. And I think our new president, giving us the go on the vaccine and pushing everyone to get it has been amazing for helping everybody along.
Yeah, I think he's a huge help. But I think also, we've seen the beginnings, but there are more and more vaccinations being developed. And, right now we have the two main ones, which have, their refrigeration requirements, but there are new vaccines coming like in the next couple of months that don't need that. And I feel like even though it's hard to get vaccinated now, in maybe 3 months,
it'll be easier.
It'll be easy. It'll be just go down to your local pharmacy and just get the jab. And hopefully by summer, everyone has got it, fingers crossed.
Well, yes. I mean, I think there'll still be some people probably that don't want it, but where is it? Is it in Israel that they're already vaccinating children?
Not sure yet. They're very much ahead of everybody that way there, I've heard.
Well, I mean, we're just going to have to wait and see. We're going to have to wait and see what it brings. But I think, I'm willing to take the chance on it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there about vaccinations, but I'm old enough to remember that polio, just about, and there were still people when I was a kid who were dying of things like measles and so on, and we all got our vaccinations, and people have forgotten because they have no experience of deadly disease, and it's very easy to be very relaxed about it and think that vaccination isn't important when those things no longer exist. But now we're seeing the other side of that, and hopefully we're seeing a science-based approach, getting more administration pushing so hard on science that maybe, we'll get a little bit of a renaissance on the importance of science and listening to prove than speculate, I guess.
Well, we'll see what happens with this vaccine, because I do remember the polio vaccine and my mother being really against us getting the polio vaccine, and they would not allow us to go to school without the polio vaccine.
Yeah.
So yeah. I guess who knows what's going to happen, with this vaccine. I mean, we don't know yet. We don't know if that it's going to be the same with the COVID vaccine. So I guess we just have to, we'll wait and see.
But do we know anyone who has died today? No. It's amazing. It's eradicated from that practically. And there's just some little holdouts in some very different places, but that's an amazing success story right from California, with Dr. Salk down in San Diego. Yeah. I mean, come on. This is ground zero for that. And we really should be optimistic. And it's incredible what scientists have done in such a short amount of time. It's really spectacular.
Yes. Well, it's all about our health. I mean, we do have to remember to try to eat right and to try to get our exercise,
We do.
take our vitamins. No,
Exactly.
it's all about doing something, even the exercise for our minds, which is
Yes.
for me work. I love my work. And I think it's so good for us, so good for our minds to
Yes.
keep our minds stimulated and busy and active, as important as it is to exercise our bodies.
Definitely. Well, we're both lucky that we have something that we do and that's challenging and makes us think creatively all the time. You know, I think that's just, I'm blessed for that. So, but I think we're just about out of time. I'm getting
Are
a
we?
note here. So that
That
went
was
by
very fast. That was a fast hour.
that really was, you know, but it's always wonderful talking with you, Jade, and you know, you're a fountain of information.
Thank you, Paul, and you. This was my honor to do this hour with you, and I hope that we can see each other soon in person.
Can't wait, you know, come up and see you and Adam once we've got shots, right?
We would love that.
Okay. Well,
Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds great. Christina.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks
so much. Bye.
Bye.